Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Napoleon, and today we're back with another Enlisted video, and today we're going to be doing a guide on the MP40, a German submachine gun Enlisted. This video will cover both the weapon and how you should use the MP40 in-game. So let's get started with the MP40, but before we start, this video has been possible for your friends at Discord, meaning if you haven't liked, subscribe, or joined the Discord, I highly suggest that you like, subscribe, or join the Discord. With that said, let's get started with the MP40. The MP38 was a submachine gun which started its life under the requirements of the German Heereswaffenwaffe, or the HWA, or the Army Weapons Office, which saw the need for a compact submachine gun suitable for armored vehicle crews and paratroopers. The Germans' arm-making industry, later known as IRMA, began the development of the new weapon under the HWA, or Army's Weapons Office specifications. It was noted that the new submachine gun was not built from scratch, instead it was the evolution of a ratherly known prototype weapon previously known as the IRMA MP36 or the MP36, which was a compact version of the better known IRMA EMP submachine gun, but fitted with now familiar folding metallic shoulder stock and a bottom-fed magazine, which was slightly chanted to accumulate the IRMA magazines. The MP36 was a slick fire weapon, and a matter of fact, improved version of the MP38 was a simpler version of the MP36, which was a little-known predecessor, adapted for several different magazines. Therefore, it took several months before the new weapon was ready for official adaptation and mass production. The manufacturer of the new weapon was designated as the MP38 and commenced on summer of 1938 at IRMA, and later known as CG Heinzel. The gun was manufactured in less than 2 years before it was replaced in production by the externally similar but less expensive MP40, which was more stamped parts instead of the more machine parts found on the MP38. There were also minor verifications in design of the MP38, such as the shape of the charge handling, etc., and the MP40 was produced in large numbers of variations which differ from mainly in the size and shape of certain parts. Also, for the end of the war, several production shortcuts were introduced to save the cost of manufacturing. Probably the most interesting variation of the MP40 was the MP41 and the MP42. These guns feature dual magazine housing for 2 magazines and literally sliding brackets, which increased the total ammunition capacity of the gun to 64 rounds, in a desperate attempt to catch up with the 71-round magazine of the Soviet PPSH-41. The later variants of the MP42 was made in limited numbers, but it turned out to be a failure. The sliding dual magazine housing was constantly sources of jams and failures and was sensitive to dirt and fouling. Needless to say, the MP38 and the MP40 machine guns were good in design and set the pattern for so-called second generation of machine guns, whereas the first generation were represented by wooden stock and carefully machined MP18s and MP28s. The second generation weapons were of a compact design and were mainly made of steel sheeting and pressing or casting. It was noted that many MP40s survived World War II, and these weapons continued to serve up until 1970 or 1980s in some European armies, such as the European and Norwegian armies. In terms of characteristics, both the MP38 and the MP40 machine guns were blowback operated weapons that fired from an open bolt. Both weapons were fully automatic only, but the relative slow rate of fire permitted from single bolts with short trigger pulls allowed the weapon to basically fire semi-auto. The preliminary bolt system was a telescopic return sliding spring guide which served as a recoil buffer, helping to decrease the rate of fire to a very manageable level, and the bolt managed to permanently attach the bolt to the early MP38s. On late production of the MP38s and the MP40s, the bolt handle were made as a separate part and served as a safety pull, pushing the hand to the bolt handle inward, locking the bolt either in clocking or forwarding the position. The lack of a feature on the MP38s resulted in field expedients such as leather harness and small sloop to hold on the bolts in terms of the position. One unusual feature of most MP38s and MP40 machine guns was an aluminum or plastic rail underneath the barrel, which served as barrel support protection when firing over the board of an armored personnel carrier. The short handguard was made from plastic and was located between the magazine housing and the pistol grip. The barrel lacked any heating installation, which often caused burns from supporting hands, and folding stock resulted in a compact weapon being folded, but it was insignificant durability during combat use and hand-to-hand combat. Single feed, double roll box magazines was another point for design. It was hard to load without additional help and often caused jams. And that is pretty much for the characteristics of the MP40 and MP38. Let's move on to the statistics. In terms of the statistics, the MP38 has a caliber of 9mm, a hit power of 5.7, a damage reduction over distance of 5.7 at 10 meters, 3.3 at 100, 2.8 at 150, 2.7 at 200, and 2.5 at 300. Armor penetration is 1, muzzle velocity is 400 meters per second, rate of fire is 450 to 490, reload time of 2.5, vertical recoil 21, horizontal of 8, fed system of 32 round magazine, weight of 4.2, and in terms of the MP38, in terms of 4-star magazine, it still has a 9mm cartridge, a hit power of 6.8 at 10 meters, 4 at 100 meters, 3.4 at 100-500 meters, 3.2 at 200 meters, and 3 at 300 meters. Armor penetration is still 1mm, muzzle velocity is still 400, rate of fire is 520 to 570, reload time of 2.2, vertical recoil of 19, horizontal recoil of 7, fed system of 32 round magazine, and weight of 4.2, and cartridge mass of 11.2. Obviously, the MP38 and MP40 are quite similar in the sense that basically they almost have no difference. And in terms of the MP40 is just basically a lighter version of the MP38, and you can actually see that in terms of the mass. And in terms of cartridge, it's exactly the same, 9mm for a 2-star, has a hit power of 5.7 at a 2-star, a muzzle velocity of 4 meters per second, rate of fire 450 to 500, reload time of 2.3, vertical recoil 21, horizontal recoil of 8, 32 round magazine. For a 5-star MP40, you basically have a hit power of 6.8, 6.8 in terms of 10 meters, 4 in terms of 100 meters, 3.4 in terms of 150, 3.2 in terms of 200 meters, 3 in 300 meters. Armor penetration is 1mm, muzzle velocity of 4 meters per second, 520 to 570 shots per minute, reload time of 2.1, vertical recoil of 19, horizontal recoil of 7, 32 round magazine, and that is all for the stats of the MP40 and the MP38. In terms of the MP40 as an overall weapon and how I see it in game, I believe it's a pretty good weapon. It's not amazing, but the issue is that for this weapon that it's being put up against weapons like the PPD-38, 34, which is going to be a pain. They're going to be put up against the PPSH-43. It's going to be pretty much put against weapons that it's going to suffer against, like the grease gun, which is the only good competition, and Normandy is the only one in which the MP40 doesn't suffer in. But almost everywhere else, for example Moscow, it's going to suffer. In Tunisia, I wouldn't even use it. In Stalingrad, you don't get it until it's very late, so it's not even usable. In terms of its usage in Berlin, you're gonna get outwhipped by the PPS, so it's not gonna be a good idea. This weapon is average. I can't say it's good, I can't say it's bad, but in terms of overall SMGs, you rather have an SMG than a semi-auto, especially if you're going close quarters combat with this weapon. But once again, this weapon is not amazing. It's just average. Can't really say it's good. As a matter of fact, I believe it's the opposite of good, in terms that it's actually quite bad for the overall campaign issue of the fact that you're going to be using this until you get a new weapon. In the case of Moscow, that's going to be the MP35-1. In terms of Berlin, it's going to be the VZ and other weapons. But in terms of good weapons, this MP40 is not good. It's not going to be a weapon that you're going to be relying on. You can still use it in close quarters combat. It just spells to me that this weapon is not good. It's the only SMG that the Axis had for their starting weapon, and it's not looking good. I would take an SMG from the other factions any time of the day. Like the MP40 is not. It's not the worst. All of the SMGs, the grease gun, I can argue that it's slightly worse than the MP40, but it's definitely not even anywhere close to the best. But this is the MP40 for you. I can't say it's extremely hard to use because it's not, but I just can't say this thing is good. It's below average, but it's not the worst. But that said, this is pretty much for the MP40 and the MP38. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the Discord, and I'll see you in the next one. Now before you leave, I would like to thank you very much for watching this video. I would be honored if you could like and subscribe to the channel. Remember, more videos are coming out, so it is a good idea to click on that notification button. Anyways, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.